All right, back again. Ozonics Killerwind podcast. I'm Cole Tanner.
I'm Nick Simon.
And we've got a special guest.
Really special guest.
Special for multiple reasons. Okay. First special reason. This is his first in-studio guest.
It is.
This is a big.
In the stew.
In the stew. First in-studio guest. We've got the myth, the man, the legend, Ben, also known as Zip.
Yep.
Oh, we got applause, don't we? Hey! Oh, you're supposed to go along with it.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. But yeah, Uncle Zip is my uncle. Neighbor too, kind of, when I'm in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Mom's brother.
Clarify.
How far down the line we want to go?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I did learn that about Nick when we went up there to get our bow set up. We went to that A1 archery, and then you guys just right down the road.
Yeah.
We driving down this road, the highway. This is and we turn down this corner, and he's like, "This did you call it the compound or something?"
Rollville.
Rollville. He's like, "This is the Rollville compound." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I pretty much know everybody and its family for the next 5 miles."
Yeah.
But
Well, I got 5 brothers and sisters, and the farthest one that lives away is 4 miles.
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really cool.
Till you're looking for tools,
Yeah,
and they're all gone.
yeah. Or if there's a big buck in the woods and you're trying to
Yeah,
figure out who
right,
needs to go.
yeah,
Yeah. Probably some wrestling matches.
Yeah.
We definitely don't have woods big enough for all of us. I know that.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that can get tough.
Yep.
But yeah, so our first in-studio guest, kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of fun trying to set everything up too.
Yeah.
Just because it's we got such a routine of just doing me and you. So it was kind of fun getting everything set up, and it worked out pretty good, I think.
Yeah. Changed up some of the camera angles a little bit and moved stuff around a little bit different. But yeah, I think it turned out okay.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I did most of the heavy lifting, so.
Makes sense.
No, I'm just kidding.
Unreal.
Yeah. Listen, you got to just give credit where credit's due. You're going to toot your own horn, you got to just toot. So,
Okay.
toot.
Cold at everything.
No, it was you know what? The
Team effort.
Yep. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yep.
That's what we're doing here.
Yep.
Okay, so what we're talking about today is everything to do with weekend warriors.
Yep.
So I think the interesting thing for us is I think 3 of us are weekend warriors.
Yeah, definitely.
But interestingly, we also have kind of very different perspectives. I'm a weekend warrior that uses Ozonics. Zip is a weekend warrior that hasn't used Ozonics. And you're kind of in between.
Yeah.
With your experience as an intern with Midwest Whitetail, you weren't really being a weekend warrior. You were hunting a lot with Ozonics.
Right.
But now this year, you're going to be hunting with Ozonics, and you're going to be back to being a weekend warrior because you're still going to be running a camera a lot.
Yeah.
Every chance that Ozonics can have you do that.
Yeah.
So your hunting will really be on the weekends.
Exactly.
And I think for me, as being a weekend warrior, because like I said, all of us here have got jobs and responsibilities, and it's just not like we can just sneak out every single day of the week.
Yeah.
I think the way I have hunted before Ozonics and after Ozonics has really changed how I do things.
Yeah, definitely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing about, being a weekend warrior is what we always talk about, you need to be able to maximize your opportunity because you can't be out there every single day.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. A lot of times you can only hunt maybe a Saturday and Sunday. And if it's raining or wind is wrong, you still want to be able to be out there because that might be the only chance you get,
Yeah.
So it'll be an interesting kind of topic that we can go around and talk about.
Yep. And for you, Zip, you're married. You've got how many kids? How many kids do you have?
5.
You got 5
One
kids.
grandchild.
5 kids, full-time job. It's just not like you can just sneak out every day of the week.
No, it's not every day of the week, and it's a lot of times not every weekend.
Right.
A lot of times we'll go weeks without being able. The kids can get out quite a bit, but I work in an oil refinery. We end up most falls have a turnaround in the September, October, so a lot of times it's October before I even get a chance to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. And what was it like too, before working at the oil refinery? When you were younger, was there ever a time where you could hunt a little bit more?
Oh yeah, I hunted a lot more. Then it was I didn't have as many kids or almost 0 kids. So And I did construction for 10 years before I did that. So if it was a snowy afternoon and we were roofing or doing something like that, we'd just pull the pin or try and get a bunch of bids and stuff done in the morning and then get out in the afternoon. So I hunted a lot more back then. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
And it's changed with the kids. It's changed how I hunt like a ton. I mean, it used to be me, you know, and then once these guys all started going, it kind of geared more towards trying to get them deer and get them out. And
definitely.
now they're getting big enough where they go do it on their own. So it works good too now. But
yeah.
Well, I feel like what you just said there hits a nail for me because that's what I'm running into. My wife and I have 5, but Jed is at that age, he's 6, where he really wants to go every chance I can.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, we're sitting here saying, oh, well, we have kids and families, but that's just not it. You're just not getting to go when you want to go. Your priority, just like I've noticed my priority shifting to go, I want to go, but I really want Jet to get one. I want him to go every chance he can. So all of a sudden, then your allotment of time even shrinks even more, and maybe your best spots you're letting Benny or Charlie or Willie, they're going to those, and then you're all of a sudden you're crunching your time even more.
Well, and we've ended up going to almost exclusively 2-man tree stands because there was always 2 guys in the seat. You know, I mean, you're not going 20 feet with a 6-year-old or 4-year-old.
Exactly.
You know, we had some pretty hairy setups back in the day, but
yeah, dude, it's so funny to say that because I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah,
I never hunted out of ladder stands.
Yeah,
I never did.
No.
I always just had hang-ons. That's what I always had done, and I would just squirrel and shimmy up a tree and not think anything of it. And all of a sudden, you know, I'm like thinking about this little dude and keeping him safe, and then all of a sudden it's like I'm going to Fleet Farm buying double ladder stands,
right? Yeah.
You know, or a single stand, a ladder stand, then I'm putting a stand beside it, and then I'm wrapping straps around him trying to keep him safe, and then I got him a harness, you know. But yeah, it's just a whole different thing.
I keep pointing at him, but I had that exact setup when he was like 4 years old.
Oh yeah,
and I mean it was an absolute death trap. And in order to, and I would have him. The ladder was set up better for where I wanted to shoot.
Yep.
So I would have him climb up above, and then he'd have to stand on the seat of the ladder and then like hang out over to get on. And he was like 4 years old, and if my wife would have ever seen what I was doing with him, she'd have probably divorced me. Right?
Yeah. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Yeah, dude, it's so funny, and I can tell with my little boy Jet, he just doesn't have the respect for being up in the air yet. Because he hasn't had that like, you know, like when you're, you know, work construction. I always joke, I work construction, you know, throughout the years and as a kid and just doing stuff. When you're on a platform and you step back and you feel your foot go
heel.
off. Yeah. It's the farthest inch of your entire life.
Yeah.
You're like, and then it's just boom, and you're right there. But man, your brain thinks you're going down.
Yeah.
And he just hasn't had that feeling yet. So, but yeah, ladder stands become a huge thing with kids.
Yeah.
And again, you just don't have as much time to go.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
Yep. And so, yeah, I think that really, all that ties right into this whole idea and what we're trying to talk about today, because I feel like, you know, one of the misconceptions I feel like we have a lot of people with Ozonics is like, well, I just don't hunt that much. You know what I mean? Like a lot of guys will look at us and say, I mean, I don't go that much. I don't know if I can justify the cost of an Ozonics or justify if I'll use it enough. But it's, from my perspective, it's like, man, dude, I feel like you need it even more.
Right.
Because you're not just going every weekend or 3 or 4 days a week and you can pick and choose your spots. You're trying to maximize that opportunity with the smaller amount of time that you have.
Yeah, you get the one day that you can get out and the wind's wrong for the stand that you know you want to be in that night.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a great segue right into that. So like that would be a great question for you. So pre-Ozonics for me as a weekend warrior, I always talk about hunting the right way. Hunting the right stand on the right day on the right wind. If, like right now, like this last season, if you didn't have the right wind and it was your day to go, what do you do? Do you go or do you not go?
We go and we try to play it, but it's, I mean, we oftentimes end up in a tree stand that we probably shouldn't be in due to the fact that just exactly that buck has been there those 3 nights in a row. Mm-hmm. Let's get in that stand. And then you're sitting there and you don't see nothing because your wind is wrong. But you went anyway, you know, hoping he comes from a different direction or.
Yeah. And I feel like too, you guys, where you guys hunt, you kind of have a, you know, kind of a unique situation. It seems like all your guys' good spots are kind of in a swirly spot.
They are. Yeah.
So it kind of makes it tough in general, which again, that just kind of leads to another point where it's like, you know, that Ozonics can really help you because, you know, where you guys have these stands in those swirly spots, I mean, the deer are there. just not when you're there, you know?
Well, it's not by coincidence, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those deer know where they can go,
Yeah.
where they can smell it,
Yep.
you know, and those swirly spots are conducive to a buck being there because it's just eventually going to come back around right to him again.
Yeah, exactly.
A few years ago in that spot at the bottom of Marl's there, when I had a doe, like 9 does come out of the woods, and they were all going to funnel right past me. What I didn't see was one to the right of me, so I stood up and I was gonna shoot a doe. It was way early in the season. I was gonna take a doe, so I stood up to make my shot, and she busted me, and they all blow out of there. I could sit that stand every single night of the rest of the season, and they would all show up. They'd be coming out to go feed in that field, but every single time after that, she was in the lead, and she would go downwind of that tree. Every single time they busted me every time I was out there.
Well, dude, and we've talked about that before. I'm a firm believer that deer are conditioned learners.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, I always joke about it. I always feel like I wish I could have a paintball gun, you know, and just be like, you know, and just put a pink paintball on that big doe,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, and the next you're like, okay, I know which one you are, you know? I had a doe one year that she had her ears. I don't know what happened. They didn't grow all the way. She had these little stubby ears. She's a big mature dog. I'm like, man, you can't hear where the diddly. You know what I mean? But I always knew it was, I always knew it was her.
Yeah.
And I was like, and she just was smart.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just wish you could tell them apart.
Yeah.
Because it's not a coincidence that all of a sudden after that, then they just know.
Yeah.
They come in and they go on the downwind side because their eyes play tricks. You know, their ears might fool them.
Yeah.
But their nose doesn't lie.
Yeah. Speaking of deer being conditioned learners, we got a spot where we got 2 stands and you can see them from each other, you know? Mm-hmm. And the one stand's been there for years. I shot my first deer out of it. It's a really good spot. There's an old double stand and kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But there was one night during gun season I was filming, and a doe came in, and I hadn't sat that spot for a while, and I didn't have a deer blow or anything like that, but she came in and she walked right by that stand, and she just stood in front of that stand, just looking that stand up and down. Nobody was even in it.
Doing the old head bob dance. They all like this. They all like,
Yeah.
They feel like if they go down a little bit, they get a different angle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I got footage of her doing it too, so we'll throw it in here.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, it's just crazy how smart they can be, and they just know.
Well, and I'll tell you what, that's one thing I think for me, pre-Ozonics as a weekend warrior, that's one thing that I feel like I had to do a lot more of is as a younger man and starting to bow hunt, I only had like a stand or 2. And so then I found myself, and I was fortunate I had a couple permission pieces, but I found myself sitting in the same stands all the time.
Yeah.
And then I would have deer that just kind of, because of the pressure and the time I was spending out there, they just kind of got used to, okay, we're not going to go that way because that means danger. We're going to go this way. And then all of a sudden I could see deer, but I wasn't getting close to deer.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And so
100%.
for me, I know what I had to do and how it's funny now I think back on, I didn't really, I knew it at the time, but I didn't really put that much stock into it. I started hunting out of a climber because I felt like on my permission pieces, I was so locked into hunting these trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the deer kind of knew I was there. So then I would start to use those trees kind of as pawns. And I would go set my climber over here.
Yeah.
I would use that climber to hunt the right winds meaning with the wind in my face on this side or that side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I would start to do because I didn't understand. I never used those Ozonics at that point. And my experience with scent control is that when I got a deer on the downwind side, they winded me.
Yeah.
And so I started to just hunted out of a climber a lot more. I still got deer on the downwind side. They winded me, but I felt like I gave myself a bit more of a fighting chance because I would hunt the right wind on the right day.
Yeah.
And I wasn't just locking myself into these couple spots.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that a lot just from the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the biggest buck I've ever killed with a bow was from the ground.
Oh, really?
And it was doing kind of that same thing. It was all those spots were getting picked off all the time. So I just moved up 100 yards and had no idea it was there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know I've had this conversation with people when they call into Ozonics, when they even using Ozonics, like, man, I'm not having great luck with it. You know, I mean, I feel like these deer are still picking me off. The first question I ask is, how often do you set in those stands and how many years have they been there?
Yeah.
And it's funny, you don't really think about it. I know I fall into that same trap. I have spots right now. We were just talking about the other day. I got to go out and I need to loosen straps up because the straps have been on that tree
Growing
long
around
enough
the tree.
Yeah.
that it's starting to grow where it's tightening those straps up.
Yeah.
Which means that if I had those stands there for 4 years, there's a doe that was a yearling that's now 4 or 5.
Right.
That every fall they walk through and they go and they look over, you know.
Yeah.
So they are conditioned to us being out there, and so I tell guys all the time, like, man, first thing I would say is, and I have to tell myself this too. Move your stands if you can. I know it's hard to get off that perfect trail, but if you can just move a stand 5 or 10 yards one way or the other,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, there was a spot actually, the permission piece I have, that first year I committed to, I hunted it the way I hunted it. The next year, I didn't set certain stands and I just moved a little bit. I used my climber. I set another stand. That's kind of why along that tree line I have multiple stands.
Yeah.
Because the middle one, that's like the best. I wore it out. So then I moved down this way and then I moved up across the creek over here and I just never sat that stand. And my buddies are like, why aren't you setting that stand? I'm like, I feel like I just need to give it a break.
Yeah.
I'm seeing deer because they were moving around me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So that's something to think about too.
Well, we're conditioned too. How many times have you shot a good deer from one spot and then hunted the crap out of it for months and months and years because you thought, you know, I mean, you sit and you'll look and you'll be envisioning that deer coming out 10 years later.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
You don't even need to shoot one. If you just see a big one come out of a spot somewhere, you're always looking in that same spot.
Oh, dude, that's what I'm terrible about. I'll sit in a spot and the deer will walk out right here, and then I'm sitting there the rest of the day. I'm just like laser beaming on that spot, you know. Like there's all this other ground around me, and I can't stop looking at that corner.
Yeah.
It's like, jeez,
Yeah.
I'm terrible about that. But yeah, I think that's what we all struggle with as a weekend guy is that, you know. And again, I'm in the same boat even now. I don't have a million tree stands. And I don't want to be like moving stuff all around all the time.
Yeah.
So I do have stuff set up. And that's another thing I think part of the reason that a lot of this saddle hunting has become so popular.
Yeah.
You know, because it allows you to be a little bit more mobile, a little bit more versatile.
Yeah.
You don't have to find the perfect tree.
Yeah.
You know, it allows you to move around a lot more. You can hunt different winds.
Yeah.
It's like a lighter version of a climber stand.
Yeah. And that's what, when you were saying earlier with, you know, my experience with Midwest whitetail, we hunted out of saddles for that exact reason. You know, we were able to move around and be mobile and go wherever we want to, you know, what the wind is doing, even when we're using Ozonics. But another kind of caveat to that is we had a lot of spots that we could hunt too. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like we were going to the same spot every single time.
and you weren't going to go hang 400 tree stands.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we did hanging hunts every single morning, you know, with still the right wind, with the Ozonics still. But yeah, so that's just kind of a difference too with, you know, the experience that I had. It wasn't like we were just hunting one spot the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to move around and do whatever we really wanted, honestly, just because we had so many options.
Yep. So that's what I was going to ask you too, Zip. So when you're talking about that you hunt on the ground, so if like you're looking at this fall, are you setting a lot of cameras and watching cameras? Or are you just like, this is where I'm going to try to hunt? Or do you sit on the ground right off the bat? Or do you sit on the ground once you feel like you wear spots out? Or how does that work?
It kind of started by thinking I was wearing stuff out, but thinking I was wearing a stand out, so I would move and try and play the wind a little bit. But I've kind of gotten to where I love it. I love hunting on the ground. I almost enjoy it more than getting up in a tree. And and I don't not a big fan of going in banging around trying to hang a stand in the dark at 4:30 in the morning and busting everything out of there and then sit there all day with, you know, I mean, not that you're guaranteeing you're kicking anything out, but it's nice to just slip in and hang out. But one thing I've found with the ground hunting is your backdrop and everything that you're doing is that buck, there's no way, the one I was talking about earlier, there's no way he couldn't have seen my movement. Mm-hmm. I was hiding behind a tree that was like this big around.
Yeah.
and I was, but I had a nice backdrop behind me, and he come walking in, and when I drew the bow, he was only about 7 yards away, and he just kept coming right towards me. Thinking I was doing a little bit of calling. I think he thought another buck had a doe pin down there, and that little movement, it didn't throw him off, you know.
Yeah.
But he was definitely upwind to me that day too. He was not downwind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's crazy. Yeah, like I said, I don't do a lot of ground hunting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I will say I've gotten out of tree stands and watched. 2 years ago, I had a buck that had a doe pinned down. I was on the edge of a field. It was just kind of a big L, and I could see down the way, and he marched her across the field from 500-600 yards away, walked down this tree line, then came down this fence line, then came down the tree line I was on, and of course he walked all that way, and then got 150, 200 yards away, and then took her up in this little tree line. I'm like, come on, watched them all day. 4 or 5 bucks came, walked same trail, walked up in there. Whoop, can't do that, and they walked out.
Yeah.
So it was like right before the end of the night. I'm like, you know what?
Why not?
What do I have to lose?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to do it. And just so happened that the wind was a weird east wind day, and he was to the east of me. So I was like, okay, wind's in my face. Like, I think I can try to do this. And so I got down and I put my backpack. I just had my normal backpack, took a gear tie that I had in my pack. I just strapped my Ozonics on that. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And I had all my stuff on and I just charged across the field. You know what I mean? Got to the field, then walked down the tree line. And I got down there. I know I glassed for. I'm like, okay, if I get to that road and then it's okay, that's 75 yards farther, so I got to there and I'm like ranging down. Okay, that's about where they went in. They got to be somewhere up in there. Mm-hmm. So I got down there and it was I'm like watching my time. It's after sunset, but it was still within the half hour. I'm like, okay, here we go. And I have like a grunt tube that I have on my arm. So I had that and I let out a couple soft grunts and he grunted right back. I'm like, oh baby, here we go. And I'm sitting there. I'm just standing like up against these trees, and he's like right here. And I'm like, dude, just come on, like just walk out, And the wind was out of the east, so it's like what I probably made the mistake of is I probably got too far, where he probably wanted to try to come around behind me and get on the downwind side. Yeah. But if he was going to come out, it was probably going to be in front of me, and I didn't think he was. After that, I was like, I probably didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what else to do, so I was like, I'm just going to go for it. If I can maybe see him through the brush, but I could hear him breaking branches, cracking stuff, and the doe was in there moving around, and he just never came out.
Yeah.
Well, and think of that too, though. All that noise that's normal to them while they're listening to the ground. A huge blob sitting up in the tree.
Yes.
That's kind of why I started liking to do it. I after that day happened, I thought, wow, this actually. I mean, they're so accustomed to seeing movement on the ground and noises on the ground,
exactly.
and so little of that is actually happening up in a tree.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, I've tried sitting on the ground a couple times and it did not work.
Well, just your hot messness is the problem, I think.
Not really, though. You've had some pretty close encounters putting some sneaks on in the past. What about the round-billed deer you had a couple years ago?
Oh, I forgot about that. That was an awesome hunt. That was sick. I shot that deer. Actually, I shot that deer off the ground.
Did you?
Yeah, during gun season.
Do you have memory loss?
Sorry.
I've not had much luck ground hunting. I mean, just that one. It's just not even worth mentioning. It's just a distant memory.
Well, the one memory I have was actually that same year. We had a really big buck on camera, and he was doing the same thing every single night, and I was up in a tree stand. And so finally, like, I'm going and buying a ghillie suit, and I'm cutting this Johnson off. And so I went and got in a ghillie suit, and I never saw that deer again. Neighbor found him dead. But so then once I stopped seeing him, I started kind of hunting this other buck. He wasn't big at all, but I saw him like 100 times, it felt like. So I really wanted to kill him. Well, there was one day it was raining real hard out or something. I can't remember why I wasn't hunting, but I just drove down past the farm to see if I could see any deer.
Yeah.
Sure enough, this buck was standing there with the doe. He had her up against a row of round bales.
Oh.
Like, kind of guarding her, not letting her go anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, she's going to be there for a while, I think. And so I turned the truck around, just cruised home as fast as I could, and got my camo on and was sitting there in the rain, just kind of like crawling up. And I could see him the entire time, and finally I kind of got set up to where I thought that they could cross. And all of a sudden the doe busted free, and she was running just straight at me, like as hard as she could. I'm like, oh, baby, here we go. So I got already. They got to probably like 60 yards, and that buck just put it into like 6th gear and just turned her, got right around her and turned her around, and then went right up the hill.
Isn't that something?
Yep. And that was the same buck during the trail cam podcast. I talked about getting down and shooting a buck off the ground.
Oh.
And it was that buck.
Yeah, right on.
Yep, Jerry.
Crazy.
We called him Jerry.
Jerry.
Yeah, because it was a constant cat and mouse game.
That's about as good as your dad's. We called him White Buck.
Yeah.
Like, real original.
The locals.
Yeah, the locals call him White Buck.
Yeah.
No, we have my mom name all of our bucks. So
Oh, that's
Whatever.
that sounds like such a Wisconsin thing. I'm just gonna say.
well, jeez, it's a good way to do it.
I guess.
Then if anybody makes fun of the name that you gave your buck, I just say, "Mom named him."
So, yeah, I mean, having your mom name the bucks, I think what you're going there is not a bad idea because then if they make fun of you, you're like, well, that's what mom said.
Well, exactly.
Yep. And
That's
then,
the whole reason behind it,
and
and
I
they're
mean-
pretty good names too.
and if you make fun of somebody's mom, you're just
Yeah,
looking.
that's wrong.
You're looking to pick. You're looking to pick a fight, and when you're in the room, you're the toughest guy.
Yeah, I know. The last thing anybody would want to do is make fun of Mama Joan.
And mess with you,
Yeah, exactly.
dude. You're basically like just nothing but muscle.
I mean, look at me.
Him and I, so we've been going to the gym together, right? And this is the best.
I hate that we're talking about this right now.
We go to the gym. Well, I've got a super dad bod, right? I'm proud of it. It is what it is. So I go there with my dad bod, right? And I put on sweatpants, couple sweatshirts, stocking cap or a ball cap. I cinch way down. I'm trying to get my sweat on. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to lose some lbs. I'm not there for a fashion contest. I'm there to lose some lbs. So I've got this weighted pack, put it on my back. I get a 20% grade on the treadmill, and I just start marching along. Well, this guy, I was like, hey, you want to do the treadmill with me or something? And he's like, what do you say? No, man. I got to get my pump on.
I like to feel that pump in the arms.
But there's something else. You like to feel the pump, but you called it something else. You called it something else. You said you like to get your pump on, but you like to get, didn't you say something like, you're like, yeah, I like when I got to get a little swollen or something. I like to
Oh,
get,
it might have been swole.
yeah, I want to get a little swollen up. I like to feel the pump, man. I got to get a good pump.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah, I guess. That's like a bodybuilder thing, dude. That's what they do. I think they get a pump.
Yeah. You cut all the sleeves off your shirts?
Oh yeah, dude. You see him. He's like twerking in front of the mirror and he's doing all these dances.
No, I'm not.
I saw you doing stuff.
I've resorted to just putting the weighted pack on, though.
Yeah. Works pretty good.
Yeah.
We got way off subject here.
Yeah.
So, like you said, can't make fun of your mom's names for bucks.
Yep.
That's actually not a bad idea. I retract my statement. At first, I didn't think I was good.
Thanks.
I have a certain way that I name bucks that is inappropriate. So we won't talk about that. But we were at the Wisconsin Deer and Turkey Expo. It's not actually called that anymore. The Wisconsin Open Season Sportsman's Expo. If that's not a mouthful.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we ate at this place called the Del Bar, which is like
really
the
good.
best restaurant ever.
So good.
Oh my gosh. And it's cheap too. It's just cheap. It's not even that expensive. It's like the most expensive restaurant.
Oh, really?
Oh, jeez.
It's really bad.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
That's a
save
once
for-
a year place.
Yeah, once a year. Scott and Buddy, if you're listening, it was Nick's idea, and it was his idea, and he forced me to go there. Well, they have this dessert menu. Everything there is amazing. The ribeyes are good, appetizers, these stuffed mushroom things, whatever else we had, it was crazy. So we get to the dessert, and you're like already so full, but you're like, man. And of course, they carry it around, and they're like, bring it right by, and so you're like, all right, fine, give us the dessert menu. Well, they have these ice cream desserts, and these names have to be the best buck names ever.
Yes.
And
it seriously is.
They are. And if you're watching this right now, feel free to use these on your bucks this fall or when you get them on camera in the summer. You're welcome in advance. In no particular order. Grasshopper, Brandy Alexander, Pink Squirrel, Banana Banshee, Golden Cadillac, Velvet Hammer. Boom! We have already used the Velvet Hammer. We
Yeah.
saw the Velvet Hammer track the other day, didn't we?
Yeah, well, wait,
In the spring.
we're not 100% sure.
Well,
Could be.
it was a track that could have been a Sasquatch, is all I'm saying. Might have been a little wet, might have been a little dragging its heel there, but it was a big track.
Could you, oh, dude, how sick would that be? Like, yeah, November 1st, we're near after Brandy Alexander.
We got, we had the Velvet Hammer on camera. It just disappeared. I don't know what happened. I'm telling you, those are good names. The Banana Banshee. Even the Pink Squirrel. If you had a buck that had a little trash going on, you call him the Pink Squirrel. That's a heck of a name.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, Golden Cadillac. Come on.
Can't beat it.
Those are good names. I'm telling you. So, yeah, that was quite the day. So, I literally had to, I'm sitting there holding the menu, trying to take a picture with myself just so I could have a copy of all those.
We name all ours that don't make any sense at all.
Oh, really?
And then we forget which one was what.
Yeah.
Because we always pick on all the neighbors for naming the names that they come up with for.
Yeah, it's constant. I get so much crap from him.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
He had a 8-pointer with no brows. And I called him Ain't No Brows.
Ain't no brows.
Or Drufus.
Drufus. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Don't make any sense, but
that's funny.
Or, Big Buck Small Rack.
yeah, I had a huge bodied buck and had a small rack, so that was his name.
Big Buck Small
Big
Rack.
buck, small rack.
That's awesome. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, it's crazy. There's lots of names out there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, we should maybe talk about like for a guy like me that's never used one,
Yeah.
because I'm really want to use one. I never really believed it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that
until actually talking with you guys last winter.
Yeah.
And you, I mean, obviously you're down here now, so
Yeah.
but I think there's a lot of that out there. I think there's a lot of people that go, yeah, for $500, I'm gonna, this thing's gonna help me.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's why they, I think there's a lot of us out there that have never ever used one, and it is mainly that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even, like we all knew about it and stuff. And, like,
Yeah,
you knew about it, but then, like-
I actually bought a cheap knockoff version of it a handful of years ago. I have one enclosed blind at home that I really think that I get boogered up in a lot, because I think your scent just kind of hangs in there, and then we'll roll out whatever window you got open, and would love to have something that would help out in that situation more than any other spot I've got. But
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, the thing that I would say to that is because I think what you just said is so right on, the fact that a lot of guys look and they go, man, I just don't know if I can justify the $500. Biggest thing I say right off the bat is I think that a lot of people don't realize that you can get into an Ozonics for a lot less than that now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Sure.
a lot less.
Yeah.
For me, working at Ozonics, I don't want to entirely focus on just the price. I want to focus on what your problem is and the fact that there's product that can help you. There's a lot of P's there.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I always say to those, and I think you and I had this conversation in Wisconsin, which I think you were kind of like, oh, crap. Never thought about that. And I say the same thing to everybody. What happens when you get deer on the downwind side? They wind you.
yeah, 9 out of 10 times they're gone.
They get you. 9 out of 10 times they get you. Same for me. Pre-Ozonics, when I got deer on the downwind side, they winded me. But the interesting thing is for me, what I always tell people is what we just established is that when you get deer on the downwind side, they wind you. But what we're really saying is that whatever you're doing right now isn't working.
Right. Yeah.
Right? You're doing some sort of scent control.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. How much time do you spend washing, hanging,
Yep.
Spraying, putting on certain clothes.
putting stuff in totes, changing, standing in your underwear in a 25-degree morning?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like all these guys have used all these different types of scent control to try to build up these blocks to come over this hurdle of success, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is when you get deer on the downwind side, they wind you.
Yeah.
So what you're doing right now really isn't working.
Yeah.
And so for the guy that walks in is like, man, I just can't justify the price. I'm like, well, I don't know if I 100% agree with that, because you're doing a lot of stuff and you're spending money right now that you're basically just kind of like lighting on fire.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not even working. We've established that, because every guy says the same thing. 9 out of 10 times I get winded. So what I'm just trying to say, and what Ozonics is just trying to say, is that there's an alternative.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to tell you, I don't see Ozonics work 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Nothing is 100%.
Yeah.
But where you get winded 8 or 9 out of 10 times, I get away with it 8 or 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
And I don't do any of the other stuff. All the stuff that I did pre-Ozonics with sprays, suits, cover scents, spraying down, special washer dryer,
Shower.
shampoos, conditioners, soaps, towels a certain way, clothes that were just for the house, for the truck, clothes for just on the way in, Ziploc bags when I got to my stand where I put my old clothes, then put on my actual hunting clothes, then sprayed down again.
Yeah.
Then had wafers that I would set in the tree and then spray down in the middle of the day. Then I had special bubble gum. I had special all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I got deer on the downwind side, they winded me.
Yeah.
You know, and so
And by the time you did all that, you spent $300 anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the thing I would say for the guy that's the weekend guy that's just like, man, I don't know. I would just really challenge you to take the opportunity to really think about what you're doing now and why you're doing it. And I think that's where you and I were like, you were just kind of like, oh, crap.
Well, and that's probably the guy that needs it the most. You
Yeah,
know?
definitely.
I mean, if you don't have that luxury of playing the wind every time you go.
Yeah.
You just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, we hunt 2 pretty small farms. I mean, and we're kind of on the outside of looking in on a couple farms, but you're really only have so many options when you go.
Yeah.
And so if we got the time, we're going.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah, exactly.
It's not about the right stand on the right day on the right wind. It's about right now.
it's that day that you have the opportunity to get out in the tree.
Yeah.
Because November 7th only comes once a year.
Yeah.
And or the peak of the rut only comes once a year. And if your weekend lands on that,
Yeah.
you're not going to not go. You're going.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to sit at home because the right stand on the right day on the right wind means don't hunt that stand.
Yeah.
Right.
You go.
Right.
Yeah.
You take your chances. You roll the dice.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think with the way the industry is, and you watch hunting shows, and everybody kind of falls into that trap too, where you get an unrealistic expectation of what's out there, right? So
100%.
you can watch, the Drurys shoot a buck out of a box blind, and it's every time it's a 185-inch deer. We're not. I don't. Have we ever had a 185 on camera?
I don't think so.
I mean, so if you, it doesn't matter. None of that matters as long as. But you start kind of falling in that trap, thinking that it's so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. You watch it happen on TV and think, oh, I'm going to go do that.
Yeah. And I think that's where I think sometimes when I have the conversation like we just had, where I'm saying, listen, guys, I don't think Ozonics works every single time. You'll see people like, what? Well, like, what do you mean? I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, there's still deer. Like, there's still times that I don't get away with it. But for me, like, the juice is worth the squeeze.
Well, if it's hanging there and it makes your scent seem like it was 10 hours ago, even,
Yes.
then so it may not work, right? That one super wary buck might get that wind and be gone, but maybe he doesn't, and he thinks that, oh, that was hours and hours ago. That guy wasn't here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I always say it's the rule of 10. If I can get, and I even think about right now, think about bucks that you've had encounters with. If you could have 10 extra seconds, 10 extra steps, 10 extra feet, 10 extra yards,
Right.
just that little bit extra, what you could have gotten away with.
Yeah.
And for me, if that's all that Ozonics did, sign
Right.
me up.
Sure.
I don't care if they weigh 50 pounds, cost $2,000, and they last a year. I'm buying one every year. Seriously.
Right.
I'm telling you. I mean, I know that sounds like a sales pitch, but that's reality.
Yeah.
If it only gave me that little extra, that's worth it for me.
Yeah.
But it gives me so much more than that.
Right.
I don't get away with it every single time. I'm going to make sure I'm straight on that. It's not 100%, but does it work for me 8 out of 10 times? Absolutely. And I'm being conservative when I say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and how do you know that some of those times it isn't because you turned your head at the wrong time, or you can't absolutely blame it all on scent.
Amen to that. I'll tell you what, I joke with Nick all the time. I used to be a videographer, and my job was to sit in a tree stand, and I held the camera, and I went like this. That's all I did.
Yeah.
My job was to sit there over the guy's shoulder and press the button like this. And when the deer, whatever, would bust out, first thing, how many times look at me and go, why'd you move? And I'm like, what? I literally went like this. I just went like that. My thumb moved. You know what I mean? And it moved way before he was even over here.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's funny because, like, it's always something or somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
if an Ozonics could talk, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
dude, look at me right now. I can't hold still for nothing. I'm terrible in a tree stand, dude. I'm like, I mean, if I had a step counter to see how many times I just sit there and move my feet while I'm standing there, like looking, I mean, I'm like probably ran like 2 miles just standing there. I'm terrible.
Well, and deer never ever take the trail that you think when you set the stand up, you get set up in this, and it's always, for me, it seems like every time there's the big one, but he's behind me and to my right, and I got to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, the other thing that we haven't even mentioned is I know for me, even now, and this is pre-Ozonics as well, is when I go out on the weekends, I try to make my own luck. Meaning I'm rattling, I'm grunting, I'm trying to create this conversation. I'm trying to stir that pot. Well, then what do deer do? They walk in, they circle downwind. All of a sudden, the trail that he usually walks down is thrown out the window because now I'm out there just cracking horns together, or if it's the time to grunt or to doe bleat, I'm doing those things. I'm not trying to like make it sound like it's WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But still, I try to make my own luck.
Right.
And then that's where Ozonics becomes even more important because I know they're going to circle down the downwind side. It's not even a question.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, as experience, you get the experience and you rattle and grunt and doe bleed or whatever it is. You just know, okay, this is my downwind side. That's probably where I'm going to start to see deer.
Yeah.
Because they circle downwind.
That buck I was talking about earlier, when I was on the ground, he was doing exactly that. I seen him from about 150 yards, and I believe I doe bleeded a couple times, and he started working his way downwind, and I honestly believe that the reason why he came in, because he got almost straight downwind of me, and then I don't know if it was me moving or him actually seeing me, but he turned and just came right to me.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he thought I was the deer. He knew where the noise was coming from, but he kept circling until he seen me.
Yeah.
And then he came right at me, which he obviously I wasn't a deer, but that would have like 10 more steps and he'd have been gone. You know.
Exactly. Yep.
It's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think this whole conversation for me, what just keeps coming to mind is we're all trying to minimize pressure. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But we're all trying to, as a weekend warriors, we're all trying to maximize opportunity. And that's where I just think the Ozonics just comes in handy, where you can maximize the time that you have to go.
Yeah. Yep.
You know? And I feel like that's what I think that's interesting in this conversation is you haven't used Ozonics and you're trying to maximize your opportunity. Sometimes from my perspective, I feel like you're kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, because there's just some of the stuff like Ozonics that you might.
There's things out there that a guy should try. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
That's for sure. I know I'm trying one.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it this fall.
Yep.
I can't wait to try it, actually. I can't wait to see it in that box plane.
I think it'll be unreal.
Well, and that's the biggest thing I think we've already talked about this. I always tell people when you first start using it, we've had this conversation before, but the biggest thing I would tell a guy like you that has never used Ozonics and you're going to start out there, do what you do. Hunt the right way. Hunt the right stand on the right day, the right wind. Don't do a thing different. Just do what you're going to do. Like in that box blind, just whenever night you were going to go, just go. Yeah. Just exhaust the ozone on the downwind side.
Sure.
You know, and watch what happens.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Just watch what happens. Everybody has the same experience. I mean, you saw guys come up to me at the consumer shows this year.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I got one here last year, and you told me just go hunt the way you hunt, put it on the downwind side, and watch what happens. And then you also said, come back and say that I told you so, and you did. You know, they're like, you weren't wrong. That actually is what happened. And that's what happens. You'll see it. You'll get deer on the downwind side that should wind you, and you'll get extra time. They'll walk through. They just won't sit there and blow out. They're just going to stop. They can't figure it out. Right. You're getting that extra time that you need. You're getting closer to deer that you wouldn't have gotten close to before. Sure. You'll see it work.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like you were saying at the consumer shows, how many people come and have the exact same story every single time.
Yeah.
It's literally like every single story is literally the exact same.
Yeah.
He came in downwind and kind of picked his head up a little bit, thought about it, and just kept walking. Mm-hmm. Like every single story is like the exact same.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Well, and I think what you talked about earlier too, Zip, is you know, I describe odor and our scent in different ways, but one of the interesting things is that I think is really applicable to this conversation too is if your odor was the number 10 And when you're sitting in a tree stand, or you're sitting on the ground, a deer walks by at 50 yards, it's pre-ozonics. It smells all 10 of you. Well, all of a sudden, when that ozone comes in contact with your odor, it goes from 10, it turns into this. All of a sudden, you're at 50 yards, but it's only smelling 3 out of the 10 of you instead of all 10. And so it feels like you're at 300 yards when you're at 50.
Sure.
It feels like it's got plenty of time. You're seeing a deer's, reaction that it would do when it's usually, you can't even see it yet. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, like you're at 50 yards, or it's comes into 30, and it feels like you're at 300, and you're at full draw.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're seeing what we do obviously inherently affects a deer's behavior.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you use an ozonics, it doesn't affect it as much.
Sure.
Right.
They just can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, what else would you say, like, as a weekend guy, like, are misconceptions or things that you feel like that ozonics might be able to help you with, that you're like, crap, this is going to completely change the way I do things?
Well, I mean, like I said, I've never obviously used it, so it's gonna be a new experience for me. But I'm excited about it. I really want to see if it can change actually how I do. I mean, because I want to use it on the ground. I would love to set something up where that thing was running while I was hunting on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
That was
good.
that was the one thing, like when I said that I was hunting when I used the ghillie suit and I didn't see him anymore. I had a doe, there was no wind at all, like zero. And I was kind of down in this, like, almost like a little ditch kind of. And the wind was just, you could tell that my scent was just kind of sitting there because, like, the deer came out. She had no idea. She came to like 4 steps. And as soon as you could tell that my scent was just sitting there. And when she got to where she could smell me, it was over just like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that being, it's kind of a different way to hunt, I feel like, when you're on the ground, because I feel like you can get in situations where you might be kind of more in a confined spot where your scent is just kind of hanging there a little bit more.
that's why I'm not a big fan of a ground blind.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had deer walk on the upwind side of me while sitting in a blind
yeah,
and blow out.
yeah,
And it's just because it's like you're filling this bubble of human
Right.
scent,
exactly.
and then boom.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I'll tell you what, the interesting thing about that, and to put a little science behind that, what you're describing, if you're in a blind and there's just not much wind that day and you feel like you're creating this bubble of odor. I'll never forget, I graduated from Iowa State. I was sitting in I don't even remember what class it was. It was a biology or science class of some kind. And the first day of class, it's so funny because this is all that I remember about the whole semester. I don't remember the guy's name. I don't remember what the class is called, which is kind of funny, which is ironic that this is the stuff that you remember. But it was a big lecture hall that went up like this. There was like 150 kids in there. It was like 10 or 15 people per row. It was just boop, 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 all the way to the top. He walks in. I was like, okay, let's get started. Attention, He's like, okay, we're going to do a little exercise. He's like, I have a bottle of perfume, and I'm going to spray it 5 times, and I want you to raise your hand when you smell it. We're all sitting there like, what? So he holds it up, and it was funny. It was like, in this day and age of like trying to get people's attention, he had everybody like undividedly. We're all just like, we were like locked in on this guy. Never forget, he holds his perfume up, he sprays it 5 times, and he just puts it down. We're all sitting there, and within a couple seconds, the front row like, whoop. And then 15 seconds later, 10 seconds later, the next row. And this went on for like 5 minutes. Everybody, and then I smelled it. I raised my hand. And and then you're like looking back, and then they raised their hand. And then but behind that, they didn't smell it. And then it just kept raising their hand. And it's like, at the end, it was funny because then at the end, he just waited and he goes, I just want to see how long you guys keep your hands up. So then if I put your hands down, we all kind of like laughed. And he's like, what did I do just there? Like, how is this science related? And some, smart out kids like, that perfume smells terrible, like just made some joke. And he's like, okay, fine, ha, ha, ha. But here's the deal. He goes, first lesson of this class, he goes, things go from high concentration to low concentration. Things want to spread out. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
That perfume coming out of that bottle was in high concentration. The minute it came out of that bottle, molecularly, if I said that right, molecularly, it wanted to spread out. It wanted to get away. It wanted to just, ozone is no different. It comes out of that ozonics off that coil in a very high concentration. It naturally wants to spread out from high concentration to low concentration. Hence why when you're in a ground blind, you literally are creating a scent bubble.
Sure.
Yeah.
Your odor, your breath, everything you're doing, it's in high concentration when it comes out of you, and it wants to spread out. Perfect example, a fart. Is that not the epitome of a high concentration, low concentration? You know, how many people have tried to snuck one out and you're in the living room, you're like, what if I can get away with this one? We're going to try it. You know what I mean? And you let it out. And then like 2 minutes later, your wife's like, really? Really? Now I'm going to bed. Now we're not watching the show. Well, guess what? High concentration to low concentration.
Yep.
That's why they say, went over like a fart in church. Low concentration. It's no different. Seriously, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't think about that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Our odor, from a molecular perspective, it's spreading out. Yeah. It's going in every way that it can to get away from itself.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, so it's something to think about. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. You know? Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, I always talk about that. I don't know if this story is appropriate, but I feel like it kind of is. Growing up, my grandpa taught me how to hunt. Okay. My mom and dad were divorced. It was just my mom, my sister, and I. And when I go to my dad's house, I spend a lot of time with grandma and grandpa. My grandpa taught me how to hunt. Okay. And it was funny because he used to give me a bottle of Windicator. Okay. At the time, I didn't think anything of it, but he gave me a little bottle of Windicator, a little white bottle. And it probably didn't actually have Windicator in it. It was probably like, you know, it was probably like flour or something because I just squeezed it constantly. But he would take me out. He had this little red like Plymouth that we would drive around. It was this little 2-door car, and we'd go and we'd drive around, and he'd take me rabbit hunting. And he had a 22 with a little scope on it, and we'd go rabbit hunting. But when we would go out there, he would let me walk with him, and he would have me out of the Windicator, and I get to puff the Windicator. And he'd always ask me, and he'd explain to me, he said, when you puff that Windicator, whichever way that stuff goes, that's the downwind side. He explained to me upwind, downwind, and he would say, that is where the line is. Meaning that we have to shoot the rabbit or the deer or whatever by the time it gets that line, because if it gets that line,
going the other way,
it's going to run away. And so, dude, he just ingrained that in me. We would go out, and he would point at me, and I would get to puff it. And I would say, oh, the line's right there. And he'd say, what does that mean? I'm like, well, we got to shoot the deer before it gets to the line, or shoot the rabbit or whatever. And I have hunted with that line my entire life.
Yeah.
Literally have. Every day before Ozonics, I hunted with the line. I set tree stands based on the line. I chose where I was going based on the line. I hunted the line. The line was an immovable force.
Right.
That's where it always was. You experience that right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a line. And I'm telling you, for me with an Ozonics, it's instead of it being a permanent marker, it's a colored pencil, right? I'm starting to erase the line.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it changes it.
Yeah.
And when I saw Ozonics work for the first time myself, I came back from Colorado guiding Scott on an elk hunt, brought an Ozonics back. Okay, here we go. I saw it work in Colorado. Let's see this work on whitetails. First doe that came out, I'll never forget that. I'm like, there's a line. Like, here we go. Like, okay, let's see if this works. And she walked right through it. And it was like my mind was blown.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's not supposed to happen. That's never happened before. And it made me think about my grandpa.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the way I was taught.
Yep.
That's the line. You know, and I think that it's just, an Ozonics can help change it.
Right. Definitely.
So, I know, it's a tear me up story. It's pretty, guess what my grandpa's name was?
I don't know.
Zip.
Zip? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, his name was Frank Tanner, but everybody called him Zip. He was a baseball player, and he was really fast, so they call him Zip. He zipped around.
Cool.
That's why we call him. Because you're super fast.
So because I'm so fast. Yeah.
Yeah, his name was Zip. When he said your name was Zip, I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's crazy. I said, I've never known another Zip.
Yeah.
But it's kind of confusing, too, because sometimes he calls you Ben.
Yeah.
And then he didn't explain
Zip
it at
is
first.
a Nick Simon thing. So
Well, everybody calls you Zip.
it's a Nick Simon started thing. Let's put it that
I think Nick likes to try to create nicknames for people because his dad's real names, I don't even know what, but now he calls him Walt.
way. Walt and Donnie.
Yeah, and then Donnie. And then there's times that he'll be like, yeah, I was talking to Ben and Donnie. And then Walt made a comment,
Walt.
and then Zip said something. I'm like, Are there 4 people in this conversation? I'm pretty there's only 3, but you mentioned like 5. You know what I mean? That's like, I don't know who he's talking about.
The Donnie story is a good story.
Oh, really?
My dad's name is Chris Simon.
With a K or a C?
C.
Okay.
Chris.
Got it. Is it really Christopher or is it Chris?
Christopher Paul.
There you go. Christopher Paul Simon.
So anywho, we do this hunt down on the islands. It's called the Island Hunt. We drive deer with our
That's
boat.
how I got the name, the Island Hunt,
Island
because
Hunt.
it's hunting
Again,
on islands.
so original.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
white deer.
Because it's called the Island Hunt because we hunt on islands. Anyway, we had a guy come with, and my dad Chris shot a deer. They're all getting back. I wasn't here for. You can maybe tell the story better, but I'm gonna see what I can do, and then you can
Yeah, go for it.
adjust. They asked the guy like, "Why? Who shot that deer?" Donnie shot it. Everybody's like, "Who's Donnie?" You know, Donnie Simonson. Everybody's
Simonson.
like, "What?" He had his name completely wrong.
He's only known the guy for 10 years, probably.
Exactly.
The whole
Thought
time
his
he knows
name is
it Donnie.
Donnie.
Yeah,
He got Chris mixed up with Donnie.
yeah, yeah,
Makes
Letters
sense.
are close together.
Right.
yeah. So everybody started calling him Donnie Simonson.
That's funny.
No, I don't know. I mean, it's really the fact that you got to build a little trust in it.
Yeah,
I think, and that's where that's why I'm excited. I'm fired up. I can't wait to use one.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, before talking to you at that show, I was like, okay, sounds good. Well, really, it was kind of my thought process was sort of not buying in,
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'll tell you what, that's one thing that we continually struggle with because the inherent disadvantage is that, I mean, I can talk to a tree, but when I talk to people about Ozonics, they feel like I'm just trying to sell them.
yeah,
Right.
I know for me personally, I'm trying to talk to them because I know it really works.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But they inherently don't trust me because they feel like I'm selling them. And
Sure.
then two,
You're a
because
salesman at a sports show.
there you go. And because of all this scent control that really hasn't worked for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're at a bigger disadvantage.
right.
Well, the whole point you make about you're doing all this already and it's not working. Why not give yourself that one more?
Yeah,
Why not? I mean, it can't hurt what you're doing,
yeah,
right?
But I think you're right in the same way that it does take a level of trust. And that's where I think that I feel like since I've been at Ozonics since 2016, and the thing that I would say in the 7 years that I've seen change is that when I first started, I felt like we were really having to sell people and try to convince people on the idea that, hey, this can eliminate your odor. This is what it'll do. Da, 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 da. Now I feel like every guy walks up and says, man, I got a buddy that swears by it.
Yeah.
If I had a nickel for every time I said,
yeah.
I got buddies that swear by it. And I'm like, yeah, man, I hear you. Everybody has somebody that knows it, knows it works.
yeah,
For me, it was you explaining how it works.
Yeah.
A little more than because I'm like, okay, so you're sitting there and you got this thing above your head and you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's no wind funneling you in a purposeful direction. It's just blowing the way it's blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand how it works, so I thought that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But after you explained it and how it works, it makes a ton more sense to me. And
yeah.
honestly, I think if I have one, I will probably if I got some stories that prove to me that the thing works, I bet you I'd have everybody in the unit that I work in the refinery would be owning one. But that's what you need, right? You need
It takes trust.
people to use it and see that it works, and then they'll never hunt without one.
Yep, exactly.
Nope, I hear you. Believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and even me, when I was a hunting guide, I knew buddies that knew people that used them. I didn't have one. And I told Scott, I'm like, man, Scott, maybe it works on whitetail. It's not going to work on an elk. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
And then I saw it for myself, and it was like the light bulb went on. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And that's what and getting back to that, I say that to every person. Man, take it out there, put in the downwind direction, watch what happens. And when you see it work, the light bulb will go on, and then your gears are going to start to turn.
Yeah.
And you're going to think, okay, now what else can I get away with? Because I think as weekend warriors, what we all fall into, and you said it earlier, we all end up hunting the wind.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But for me, the difference between pre-ozonics and post-ozonics as a weekend warrior, there is a time of year, and I'm not saying every single day of the year, but there's a time of year when I stop hunting the wind and I start hunting the deer.
Yeah.
You follow me? Mm-hmm. Because I feel like we all hunt the wind a lot,
Yeah.
but that's not hunting the deer,
Right.
Right.
you know? And it's gotten so far for me now that it's not only just about stop hunting the wind and start hunting the deer. I even think about that when I'm setting stands where I'm going to hunt that day. Especially setting stands, I go out to a spot and I go, okay, where would I set stands for the wind? Okay, I'm going to set him here and here and here. But where would I set him for the deer? Well, that's easy. He's going to walk out right there.
Yeah.
And I'll set a stand there.
Yeah.
And when the time's right and it's that weekend that I get to go and it's the rut, I will stop hunting the wind and I'll start hunting the deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that has completely changed the way I do things. I mean, heck, we talked to that guy. We talked to Dwayne Diefenbach last week.
Yeah.
And what did he say? Man, the moral of the story is, from what I took from what he said,
Yeah.
is get out in the woods
And hunt.
and hunt. Get in a tree stand.
Yeah, it goes out. It's the whole you can't shoot one from the couch, right? But
Exactly.
and when you are in situations that I'm my time is extremely limited, and so I'm going if it's a day that I can go. Right?
Exactly.
You know, I mean,
Get in the woods, get in a tree stand. And and that's for me. It's like I just not as concerned about the wind and I'm more concerned about the deer.
Yeah.
And I just want to be out there. And if I can be out there and it's my weekend to go, I'm going to go and I'm going to try to give myself every advantage. So if I get a deer on the downwind side, I have a fighting chance.
Yep.
right.
Thought it out.
Well, heck, I think that's a good way to end it.
I think so too.
That was like a crescendo high note.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. Another podcast in the books. Ozonics Killerwind podcast. I'm Cole Tanner.
I'm Nick Simon.
This is Zip.
Thank you for coming on, Zip.
Thanks, Zip.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of
Yep.
fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you when we see you.
Yep.
See you on the flip side.
Peace. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.